Right, so thanks for everybody who is either watching this or listening to this audio. So my name is Mel and I am aka the mummy trainer on most platforms. I'm a pre and postnatal specialist as well as being a tutor and an assessor within the fitness industry. So I really wanted to talk to somebody who knows more about pelvic floor than I do, because it's a really, really vital part of the body that a lot of us have a tendency to ignore, not because we do that purposefully, but because a lot of the time we don't know what's going on. So I wanted to talk about this from a fitness instructor's perspective. So today we're going to be chatting to the lovely Gemma from Generation Move. Say hi, Gemma.
Hello.
I'm going to try not to talk too much, but yeah, we thought this was a really important topic to discuss, especially with changes going on in the news, and just to educate fitness professionals a little bit more, really. So could you tell us a little bit about what you do, and then I'll fire some questions at you.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Mel. Thanks for having me on here.
Welcome.
It's really exciting. So yeah, my name, I've got a really long name, so I apologise for that. It's Gemma Eldridge Carew. As soon as you type Gemma Eldridge, you know, I pop up. So I'm a fitness professional and have been for the last, oh my gosh, I can't even remember, about 20 years now. But I've really niched down into movement for pelvic floor recovery. And I work for the Fire Brigade. And so my main role is to prepare women who have had babies, really, to come back to work, because obviously being a firefighter is a really intense, physically intense job, and sometimes the women who are coming back have pelvic floor issues or abdominal separation, and they need help getting their fitness back in a really safe way so they can carry on with their careers, basically. And it was only until I had my own babies that I realised what the importance was in doing this work, and that has led me on to building my own business, really, called Generation Move. So here I am teaching movement for pelvic floor health.
Awesome. It's a good introduction. It's a good introduction. So obviously, as you stated, you've got experience working in the fitness industry quite long. You've had your own children, so you've experienced your own pelvic floor issues, as have quite a lot of us that have had children, myself included. So just to bring it right back to basics for those of you fitness instructors, or even if you're just watching this and you've got an interest in fitness, could we just talk briefly about what the pelvic floor is, just for those who don't or may not know?
Yeah, so the pelvic floor is basically a muscle, and it's a muscle situated in our pelvis. And basically, if you place your hands on your vagina, put your hands between your legs, you are going to be feeling your pelvic floor muscle. And for most people, the pelvic floor muscle is the muscle that holds in our wee and poo. So when you really need the toilet and you're like, oh my God, it's the muscle that's stopping that wee and poo come out before we get to the toilet. But it also has other functions that we don't think about. So it's part of our core. So when we say core, people might think, oh, you know, that's my tummy muscles. But actually, it's your tummy muscles, your back muscles, your bum muscles, and your pelvic floor. Also, your pelvic floor is a muscle that holds in your pelvic organs. So if you think of your pelvis, where your hips are and your bum is, it's like a bowl. So it's like think of your cereal bowl, and your pelvic floor muscle is the bit underneath the cereal bowl. So it's the bit that's actually holding in, you know, your cereal, basically. And so that pelvic floor muscle is holding in our pelvic organs, such as the bladder, the uterus, the rectum, the bowels. So all of those things are all held together by all held up by the pelvic floor. And the pelvic floor is also so important in our respiration as well. It's part of our breathing mechanism. So the pelvic floor has so much to do with our bodies, and we don't even realise it. So that's basically the pelvic floor in a nutshell. It's a muscle, and it's a muscle that needs to do its job in the body.
I really like the cereal analogy. So quite often when I'm explaining it to people, I'm like, it's like a sling, and I cut my fingers together and hold it down there. Because you've got a pelvis behind you, haven't you?
I have got a pelvis behind me, but I didn't know whether to refer to it, because I couldn't remember if this is audio or
it's both. It's both. Feel free. Yeah, feel free.
Yeah. The only thing with my pelvis, Mel, it's only got half a pelvic floor, right? That's not good, all right? So all of us hopefully have a whole pelvic floor, but actually it's really good to, let me just pull it apart. I can quickly show you. It's a magnetic. I love my pelvic floor model. So this is just half of the pelvic floor. So there's your pelvic floor muscle. This part here, hang on. Bring it back so you can see properly. This part here is your pubic bone. So if I just stand up, that's that bit there.
Yeah.
And this bit here is your tailbone. So if you put your hand on your backside, that's your tailbone. And then you can see that's the bottom of the cereal bowl. There's your cereal, there's your bowl, and that's the bottom of it. That's your pelvic floor muscle. And there you've got your pelvic floor organs there. Okay, so you've got your bladder, you've got your uterus, and then you've got your rectum there. Okay, all held by the pelvic floor.
I want one. I think that's brilliant. And if you are watching this on the audio, don't worry, because we'll make sure that we include a link to Gemma's website. And I know that she's got really great graphics on her website and on social media and stuff that you'll be able to go and have a look at if you're listening to this. So I'm only going to ask like 3 questions that I feel are quite relevant as fitness instructors. So obviously we've explained what the pelvic floor is, and now really I want to talk about pelvic floor dysfunction. So for those of you that are wondering what that means, is basically when the pelvic floor doesn't work properly. And what would be the main issues of that if someone was suffering from pelvic floor dysfunction?
So pelvic floor dysfunction is actually a massive term that is an umbrella for lots and lots and lots of different issues with the pelvic floor. But for the purpose of this video, I think the most issues that you often hear about is stress incontinence. So that's when, people might wet themselves when they sneeze, laugh or cough, or even poo themselves as well, which isn't often talked about because it's so taboo, and it really needs to be talked about because it can be completely debilitating for somebody's lifestyle, for somebody's life. And the other thing we often hear about is urge incontinence. So that's the one where it's almost habit like driven. So it's when you get home, and they actually call it the key in the lock syndrome, because it's like you get home, you're about to put your key in the door, you're like, oh my God, I need the toilet. And the urge is so strong that you wet yourself. Your body just can't hold it in. You can't get to the toilet in time. So that's urge incontinence. And the other one we hear quite a lot about is prolapse. So that's when one of the pelvic organs, let's bring you back to my model. So that's when one of these pelvic organs, one or more, you can see they're all sitting nicely together there. But this is when one of them might drop down, and this can be feelings of heaviness or like a bulge in the vulva area or the vagina area. You might feel like there's like an egg when you're sitting down. And this can have many stages. So quite a lot of people have a prolapse, but they don't have any symptoms. Or some people can have quite a big prolapse where you can actually see the organs protruding from the holes outside.
Wow.
Really needs to get checked out. But it is quite common. So they're probably the 3 things that we hear of most. Mm-hmm. And also having a pelvic floor that is too tight as well. So maybe you're having pain with penetration, whether that's putting a tampon in or sex. So having a too tight pelvic floor is also part of pelvic floor dysfunction. But I've just gone through these are the things that most people have heard of, but there are loads and loads of other issues that can go on with the pelvic floor that come under that pelvic floor dysfunction umbrella.
So as fitness professionals, what can we do to aid clients that have pelvic floor dysfunction, looking at what it is that you've just described to me right now? And the reason why I asked that is because, and we were discussing it before I hit record, Kegels it was one of the only words that got bandied about. And even having children, you're not told, and we'll come on to that later, you're not given any guidance, bone contention, around pelvic floor health when you've had a baby. So I really want fitness instructors, whether or not it's something that we can incorporate now, or we'll direct people to further education afterwards. What can we do to help with people with pelvic floor dysfunction?
Yeah, that is such a great question, because I think even though the pelvic floor is a muscle, and as fit pros, we should be well versed in muscles. I mean, we know everything about the bicep, we know how to work the glutes, we know how to work our thighs, we know how to work our stomachs, but no one says anything about the pelvic floor. And the pelvic floor is a muscle, probably the most important muscle, really. But it just doesn't even get mentioned, does it? When we're doing our training, it's barely there. It might be there in the pre and postnatal exercise specialists, but not a great deal. So I think the first thing that a fit pro can do for their clients is just awareness. So I've written some awareness points down, because I always forget them. I think is to know the signs and symptoms from your clients. So, for example, just doing with their PAR-Q or with their health screen is just to know a bit about their background, a little bit about their history, little clues in their story that could be, this person might have pelvic floor dysfunction, just to be aware of it. Does your client run to the bathroom before every session? And I don't mean that, they've got changed, they've gone to the toilet, they've come to your class, but they literally go, right, I'm going to go to the toilet again, and they run out. Or is there a certain exercise, like a jumping exercise, like burpees, squat jumps, especially in a HIIT training session? Does your client need to go to the toilet after they've done those exercises, or do they go to the toilet every single time you mention that exercise? Do they go, oh, let me just go to the toilet first? That's a good sign that there's something going on. Does your client talk about trauma or childbirth? Do they always talk about what happened to them during birth? That's also a good sign that there might be something going on there. Some people complain of a really deep ache in the backside, or like their tailbone. If they're thinking, oh, that really hurts my tailbone. That's also a sign of pelvic floor dysfunction. That's that pelvic floor tightness, because there's a lot of gripping going on that can cause pain. And also the prolapse sensation again. So does the client feel that there's something heavy or like a dragging feeling in between their legs? They're all signs and symptoms that as fit pros we need to be aware of and think about, okay, what does this client need from me? Do I need to think about taking out high impact exercises? Do I need to refer them? Do I need to refer them on to somebody else who can really delve deeper? And I think the main problem is that because it's the pelvic floor, lots of people are really embarrassed to talk about it because it's such a taboo subject. So there's that line, isn't there? It's like, I don't want to embarrass my client by asking them outright, but also you don't want to do them a disservice. And I think as fit pros, and I feel really strongly about this, Mel, so sorry if I get like I'm right on my soapbox, but there's that culture, isn't there, that you've got to bounce back after having a baby. And even if you've got a pelvic floor problem and you haven't had a baby, then there's still this culture, we've got to look a certain way. We've got to be slim, we've got to be strong, we've got to be, we've got to look like the airbrushed woman in the magazine. And it's so ingrained in us that, and as fit pros, that we just go for the weight loss thing all the time. But really, we should be talking about movement and exercise to care for our bodies. And I feel really strongly about that. So many people who have had a baby, they're like, right, I've got to get my figure back. It's like, no, what about caring for your body? Look at the amazing thing that it's just done. Let's use movement and exercise to now care for your body. So I think as fit pros, it's about the awareness and what you can do for that client the best way that you can. If you've got the knowledge of pelvic floor, then go for it. There's so many movements, because the pelvic floor is a muscle and it's in our hip, in our pelvis. Even like moving around, it's a pelvic floor exercise. It's like squats, deadlifts, hip or hip hinges, movement with the upper body, getting your alignment right. They're all to do with the pelvic floor. So you're probably doing pelvic floor exercises and not even know it. It's about having that awareness and cueing it right and looking out for what's right for your client. So I'm not saying that all fit pros need to go down and specialise, but it's about the awareness and being able to refer when needed. Does that make sense?
That makes great sense. And I think that, if I'm honest, it's not the route I thought you were going to go down, but I'm actually really pleased that you did, because not all fit pros will be able to work within that remit because they won't have the necessary knowledge or experience. And I think awareness is more important, because we can access information and deliver that content to our clients, but if we don't fully understand the process or the issue, then it's kind of pointless, really.
Yeah, definitely.
Completely.
And also, let's be honest, it's not everyone's cup of tea, is it? Like, I don't really enjoy. I enjoy most movement, but I probably wouldn't enjoy. I can't think of anything now that I've said that. That's silly, isn't it?
Yeah. I know what you mean. It's not going to be suited to everyone.
For example, I like nutrition. I like learning about nutrition, but I don't love it enough to specialise in it. Yes. So I don't teach it. So I move that on to someone else, if that makes sense.
No, it does. I'm the same. I work with a PT who specialises in nutrition. So whenever I have clients that want that kind of support, I just move them over to her, because I'm trained in it and I can teach it, but it's not something that holds my interest. I mean, personally, I think that all courses that are training anatomy and physiology should touch upon the pelvic floor, even when you're at level 2s. And it's also important to remember that pelvic floor issues aren't just for women, that men also struggle with pelvic floor dysfunction as well, which is really, really important. This is a topic that we could just talk about for hours.
No, I'm sorry,
No. Don't apologise at all. I think awareness is massive. So there's lots of training out there, lots of different people that you can follow to gain more information. And I think that's where I'd want to really direct people now. So I would like you to talk about what it is that you offer in terms of support to other people, because I know, obviously, I get your newsletter, which you can tell people about as well. But you have like courses, online courses that might be for clients, but there's no reason why fitness professionals couldn't take them either for additional knowledge. So if you could tell me a little bit about that, that would be great.
Yeah, okay. So I specialise in pelvic floor with movement. So there's quite a lot of things that I do. So let me rewind. So my courses are very movement based, and every move that I teach, I talk about how it relates to the pelvic floor. So I do have a course called Pelvic Floor Reconnect that really focuses on the recovery aspects. It's really gentle, and it looks at all sorts of aspects of your movement. So it even looks at how you sit. Do you sit all day? Are you always on your phone? How does that impact your breathing? How can we use exercise and movement to correct that so that it has a great impact on the pelvic floor? So that's the sort of thing I do in my Pelvic Floor Reconnect course. And that's like a 12-week course that you go through online and you have complete access to me in a Facebook group. So anybody has any trouble, like, oh my goodness, Gemma, I have no idea what you're going on about there, please explain it another way. So you have that access to me as well, because it can get really confusing. If you've never thought about your body in that way before, sometimes you're just like, oh, there's just too much to know. But I also do personal training with pelvic floor, and obviously during COVID that's been online, and I've kind of stuck to online because it works quite well and I can reach more people. But doing online means that I can really look at how you move and use movement for your particular issue, and because I can see how you move, I can kind of gauge what you need first. Whereas the online course, obviously, I can't see you, so you go through a kind of a week by week series of exercises. But with personal training, I can pick and choose what you would need the most. So I do talk about Kegels, aka pelvic floor exercises. So in the UK we call it pelvic floor exercises, but I know in Australia and America it's Kegels mainly. And they're those squeeze, release. You know, the ones that people say, oh, you can do it at the traffic lights.
Yeah.
Not that you should do it at the traffic lights, because it does mean that you're sitting in a car, which means that you're not sitting correctly to do your pelvic floor exercises. I could go on. So I do talk about those exercises and how you can do them correctly, but the majority of it is movement. And from my own personal experience, I was told when I had pelvic floor issues after having my first baby, I was told to do Kegels, and they sort of worked, but not really. I couldn't integrate it into my daily movements, and I couldn't, I knew I had to go back to work and be fitness advisor for the fire brigade and do all these like wacky circuits, and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do it. So it was only when I started incorporating movement and being able to use the movement to stimulate the pelvic floor, to get the pelvic floor lengthened, relaxed, released, and then strengthen it back up again, that my own issues were so much better, and now I don't have problems at all.
That's really, really good. And I think being able to relate personal experiences will always give you an advantage, even though at the time you're struggling, it won't feel like you've got any kind of advantage at all. So in my personal opinion, just thinking about what it is that we've discussed, I think that awareness and education are two vital things, but those two things will only ever come about by people having uncomfortable conversations, and that can be about anything in life. But obviously, talking about this issue in particular, it needs to stop being a taboo subject, especially when in the news they're trying to recommend to people that young people, girls in particular, should be doing pelvic floor exercises, which we touched on briefly, and I know that's a whole nother video. But
you're going to need a little bit longer for that.
Yeah, there's a whole nother video. But I think that when you start to see it come into the government, from the government into the mainstream limelight, it's a positive as long as the information that is out there is correct, or we use that and share that on our platforms to educate people in the right direction. So it's a big step forward because they're talking about it. But it's important as fitness professionals that we then go on and do it's due diligence, isn't it? We then go on and do our due diligence.
Absolutely, I 100% agree with that. I mean, it is a step in the right direction. I mean, thank goodness we're starting to recognise the importance of it, because actually incontinence costs the NHS goodness knows how much money, and also it has a major impact on postnatal depression as well. So it's something that really needs to be addressed. But as with all things, it's not just a simple go do your pelvic floor exercises. There are other aspects involved. One of the biggest aspects in terms of young kids is their movement. Never before have our kids been so still. they're on their phones, they're sitting at the computer at school, always in the same position. And then they get home and they want to watch telly, they want to play, you know, on their game or whatever it is. I can't even remember what.
I know what you mean.
But, you know, they're all, it's all in the same.
Yeah, the posture's massive, isn't it?
Posture is huge. Posture is such a huge topic with it. So I think, yes, it's good to have education on pelvic floor exercises, but actually it's more important to get these kids moving, and then pelvic floor function will become a result of that, if that makes sense. You're going to get less problems because our kids are moving, and that's the thing.
Completely agree. And I think that's a good place to draw it to a close, because this
start waffling again.
It's such a massive topic. No, you haven't waffled. It's been interesting, definitely. And I think that I see this as kind of like an introduction, a pathway to more education for fitness professionals. So where can they find you on social media? Where can people find you and find out more information about what you do?
Yeah, so you can find me on social media at Generation Move UK. Bit of a strange name. There's a story behind it, but I won't go into that. You can have a look at my website to find out the story. I am sort of on Facebook, but it's basically what I post on Facebook is from Instagram. So Instagram's my main platform. And then I've got a website which is www.generationmove.co.uk.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you for asking me. It's been lovely to speak to you.
No, it's good. And, I'm sure it'll be the first of many conversations and keeping moving forward in making sure that professionals have the right information to support the right people. Yeah,
definitely. And I think for all fit pros, when in doubt, refer on. Even if you're asking someone, do you know what, just go to a pelvic floor PT just for one session, just to check that you're doing your pelvic floor exercises right. Do you have a tight pelvic floor, or is it a weak pelvic floor? Let's get the knowledge so that you can work the best way possible for your client. That's the main thing.
It's great. Great. Well, thank you very much for your time, Gemma. And you know where to find her. She's told you where you need to find her on social media. And if you don't already follow me on social media, I am the Mummy Trainer UK on Instagram. And that is where I generally tend to hang out the most. So thanks again, guys. Don't forget to drop a comment wherever you see this. Or if you're hearing it, you can drop an email or send us a DM. Thank you very much.